The Korean War 1950 to 1953 erupted on a humid Sunday dawn, the 25th of June 1950, when North Korean forces surged across the 38th parallel in a bid to reunify the peninsula by force. What followed was a brutal, seesaw conflict that killed millions, drew in great power armies and air forces, scarred a nation already battered by Japanese colonialism, and left a legacy of unresolved tension that still shapes global security. At Japan's surrender in August 1945, Allied planners improvised a division of Korea along the 38th parallel. Soviet troops accepted the Japanese capitulation in the north, while U.S. forces did the same in the south. The rival states crystallized in 1948 in Seoul. Syngman Rhee presided over the U.S.-backed Republic of Korea in Pyongyang. Kim Il-sung ruled the Soviet-supported Democratic People's Republic of Korea (DPRK). Each claimed to be the peninsula's sole legitimate government. Stalin's atomic breakthrough in 1949, Mao's victory in China, and Washington's strategic ambiguity about defending South Korea emboldened Kim, who secured Soviet tanks and artillery, and Chinese acquiescence for an invasion. At 4 o'clock on the 25th of June, 135,000 DPRK troops, spearheaded by T-30 for tanks, smashed through lightly armed rock units. Seoul fell within 3 days. By August, the defenders clung to a shrinking perimeter around the port of Pusan. In Washington, President Truman framed the assault as naked aggression reminiscent of the 1930s and rushed air, naval, and ground forces under a United Nations banner. The Security Council absent a Soviet veto because Moscow was boycotting over the China seat issue authorized collective action, setting an enduring precedent for UN military operations. General Douglas MacArthur gambled on an amphibious turning movement. On the 15th of September 1950, U.S. Marines hit the seawalls of Incheon, halfway up Korea's west coast and well behind enemy lines. The landing severed DPRK logistics, liberated Seoul within weeks, and pinched the invaders between converging UN columns. With the Pusan perimeter broken and 125,000 North Korean troops captured or killed, Kim's army disintegrated. Political goals now escalated. Truman approved an advance beyond the 38th parallel toward the Yalu River, aiming to topple the DPRK and unify Korea under Southern auspices. Mao Zedong, fearing hostile forces on his border and seeking to cement Sino-Soviet ties, committed the People's Volunteer Army (PVA). In late October, crack Chinese divisions infiltrated the mountains and hid overstretched UN spearheads. In a series of night attacks, the winter battles, most famously the Chosin Reservoir, where U.S. Marines executed a fighting breakout, drove UN forces back below the 38th parallel. Seoul changed hands a second and third time. By spring 1950, one front line stabilized roughly where the war had started. An attritional trench warfare replaced maneuver. From mid-1951 to mid-1953, both sides dug complex bunker systems reminiscent of World War I outpost fights over obscure ridges. Bloody Ridge, Heartbreak Ridge. The punch bowl generated staggering casualty lists for negligible ground. The air dimension intensified. U.S. 5th Air Force and Task Force 77 pounded northern infrastructure, making North Korea one of the most heavily bombed countries in history. Soviet pilots, flying MiG-15s under Chinese markings, clashed with U.S. F-86 Sabres in high-speed dogfights over Mig Alley. Civilians paid the heaviest price. Estimates suggest 2 to 3 million noncombatants died amidst bombardment, massacres, and privation, representing a far higher civilian share of total casualties than in World War II. Armistice talks opened at Kaesong in July 1951 and soon moved to Panmunjom. Progress stalled over prisoner of war repatriation. Tens of thousands of anti-communist captives refused to return north, while Beijing and Pyongyang demanded forced restitution. The front remained lethal. Both sides fought to improve negotiating leverage, yet strategically static. In November 1950, to Dwight Eisenhower's election, coupled with discreet U.S. hints that nuclear options were on the table, added pressure. On the 27th of July 1953, the Korean Armistice Agreement froze the battle line and created a 4-kilometer-wide demilitarized zone (DMZ) that still bisects the peninsula. No peace treaty followed. Legally, the war never ended. The war devastated Korea. Nearly every major city from Seoul to Pyongyang lay in ruins. Bridges and railways were twisted wreckage, and millions were homeless. Military deaths exceeded 1 million. Civilian fatalities may have reached 3 million, roughly 10% of the peninsula's pre-war population. North Korea alone lost an estimated 12 to 15% of its people. For the United States, the conflict entrenched a permanent Cold War garrison in Asia, spurred rearmament, and validated the strategy of containment through limited war. Japan, serving as UN logistics hub, kick-started its post-war industrial boom. China emerged as a major military actor and, despite horrific losses, claimed victory for preserving a communist buffer state. The Soviet Union gained a proxy commitment from both allies, but also faced deeper U.S. resolve and a rearmed West. On the peninsula, the ideologically opposed Korean states hardened into separate realities, one evolving into a vibrant democracy, the other an isolated hereditary dictatorship. The DMZ remains one of the world's most fortified frontiers, a stark reminder that the Korean War is not merely the forgotten war, but an unfinished one whose embers still glow beneath the armistice's thin ice. 8 decades on, historians view the Korean War as a crucible that globalized the Cold War, recalibrated international law on collective security, and etched trauma into Korean memory. Its unresolved status underscores the fragility of peace when ideology, power politics, and national aspiration collide, an enduring cautionary tale for a world still haunted by divided lands and unfinished conflicts.